The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. They gave a dinner for him there, and Martha served, while Lazarus was one of those reclining at table with him. Mary took a liter of costly perfumed oil made from genuine aromatic nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus and dried them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Then Judas the Iscariot, one of his disciples, and the one who would betray him, said, "Why was this oil not sold for 300 days' wages and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and held the money bag and used to steal the contributions. So Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Let her keep this for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The large crowd of the Jews found out that he was there and came not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. And the chief priests plotted to kill Lazarus too, because many of the Jews were turning away and believing in Jesus because of him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
If you've ever tried to communicate with another human being, odds are you have experienced being misunderstood. Teachers, I think, or parents especially, experience this. No matter how many times you explain and re-explain or try to use different words or different nuances or different tone of voice, sometimes it just doesn't seem the message ever gets through. This saying of Jesus here, 2/3 of the way through this gospel, is, I think, one of these sayings that has been misunderstood. You always have the poor with you. I think sometimes we can use that saying to justify not doing anything for the poor. It's like, oh, you're always going to have the poor with you. I don't think that's quite what Jesus was meaning. In fact, I kind of hear Jesus being very sarcastic here towards Judas. Judas expresses that, oh, I'm deeply concerned for the poor, and we all should be. And Jesus looks at him and says, you? Like you always have the poor with you. Calling Judas out in his true intentions. So I find myself in these days of this crisis that we're going through often thinking about those who are poor. This crisis, it's probably no surprise to anyone, is affecting poor people probably more so than others. Yes, we're all susceptible to this virus, but the consequences of getting it if you're poor are probably much greater. So what do we do? How do we approach the poor? I think we do it by first looking towards Jesus. In all of our encounters with Jesus, we're always asked to prioritize all of our concerns, and our chief concern should be Jesus, and how are we responding to Jesus? If we look at the way that Jesus responds to everyone, sinners, the poor, whoever it may be, it's with the deep love of the Father. Always loving, no matter what. And I think if we let that inform us, we can learn what our action towards the poor should be. It's not to get them to a place where they can participate in a consumer society. The poor just are suffering more than others. And Jesus is always with those who suffer the most.